I'd like to welcome you to the Milton Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, December 10th, our regular meeting at 6 p.m. And I'd like to call to order our group and have a flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Having some issues down there. I'm trying to turn it on. I was seeing if it was on.
and roll call. Commissioner Boyle is absent. Commissioner Oler?
Present.
Commissioner Johnson?
Present.
Commissioner Zorro?
Here.
Vice Chair Whalen, here. May I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Boyle?
Make a motion to excuse Commissioner Boyle and his 19 days on vacation.
I'll second that.
Wish I
A
was
motion
there.
has been made by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Zorro, to excuse Commissioner Boyle from tonight's meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Okay, are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to tonight's agenda? I'd like to suggest an addition of just a general topic of starting the discussion on ideas,
On what?
to suggest ideas, to suggest as part of our work plan. Is that okay with another member of the group? Yeah, okay. So we have 2 people saying yes and more saying yes. Okay. So work plan, just general overview. Okay, we'll make that item D on tonight's agenda. Okay. On to public participation. At the moment, we have no one in our audience, and thank you to anyone who may be watching. And so we are on to the approval of minutes for October 7, 2025. May I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of October 7th, 2025.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Yeah. October 7th, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Second.
A second. Okay, a motion's been made by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Zorro, to approve the minutes for Tuesday, October 7, 2025. Are there any comments?
Nope.
The only thing I noted was under the heading of excused, we have a commissioner but no last name. And I think that was just a little
Underwear.
carryover. When you see roll call, excuse, and commissioner. So, yes, so I would like to suggest we delete that and commissioner. Any other comments on the minutes? Okay. So we have amended minutes, deleting the words "and commissioner" in the excused membership for roll call. All those in favor of the motion with amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. So we're on to our next topic for discussion tonight, which is PLN 2025-0008, Significant Tree Code. And I'd like to turn this over to our planning manager, Manager Stalnaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Commission. So we talked about this at the last meeting, got some great input from everybody, and I wrestled with trying to take our existing little subsection and try to fluff it up, and I kind of felt like it was enough of, I think, an important topic and enough of what I think we're trying to move toward to just pull it out and it make it its own. Well, how do I? Make it its own. It was like a subsection, so just make it its own little subsection and its own new thing. So that's what I have here on page 7, 8, 9, and 10. is a proposed community forest preservation subsection 1744.115, and it would replace 1744.110G, which is what's on 11. So first of all, is the Planning Commission, is there, enough consensus that we think that makes sense to sort of really kind of quit having it as just a little subsection in landscaping and make it its own thing? And then with that, this is, I sort of, again, pulled together from a couple different codes that I found very useful. Tried to, kind of, A is obviously the purpose and intent, B being definitions that specifically apply to this, applicability. So right now, our landscaping only applies to kind of new big stuff. This would apply it to basically everything in different levels. So we can kind of go through each section in a second, but I figured I'd just sort of do an overview of what I was thinking. So kind of the idea that, any new development, including single families, two families, ADUs, would have to at least look at, are we taking down trees? And if we are taking down certain trees, some sort of replacement value, where right now there's not that. Also looking at lots, what we kind of talk about is sort of underdeveloped. Like, yeah, maybe there's a house, but it's, it's a large lot. So maybe we still need to consider that in certain aspects. And then the idea of if they want, so D is sort of just dealing with if you're removing a tree, but it's not tied to a development. So you have to go through a certain process. If it's dead or dying, this is what you do. If you, for whatever reason, you think you want to, but anyway, it kind of puts some parameters, because we get these people who come in who sort of just want to clear their lot. And we basically tell them they can't, but there's not always the code to back it up. And so I would like to have that there. Obviously, E talks about the exemptions of what they can remove without talking to us. F outlines what a tree survey needs to have. G talks about the tree retention of, if you're removing trees, what you have to retain. And then H applies to if you are taking out trees, what you're taking out. So in some ways, our current code, if you look on page 11, it sort of says you should try to keep all the trees you can. Well, it's very reasonably retained. It's always hard when you have language that's kind of vague. And so the proposal talks about you're supposed to do 35%, and any trees you remove that you can't keep. Beyond that, there's a certain retention level. It also, I guess I'm hitting the high points, and then we can go through. The other big one is under tree retention. So we created, I'm proposing we create a new definition. So right now we sort of have that significant tree, though there's kind of been a definition, but I've finalized that. So significant tree is anything with a minimum, evergreen with a minimum diameter of 12 inches, and deciduous with a minimum diameter of 9. I'm proposing we also create another definition, which is called an exceptional tree. So basically, if this tree is over 30 inches or greater, you're just not removing it, is kind of what we're saying. So that's kind of, so in a nutshell, that's sort of where I'm hitting on the big overview of what I've been pulling from other stuff. So if we want to kind of go through the individual sections specifically to see how everyone is feeling on that, that would be great. But this is where I came up with. I felt like instead of piecemealing what was already there, let's just start fresh. It kind of sets that groundwork. And then if I'm able to, over the next couple of years, to get more of a program and a plan and everything, we already have this kind of set up to back us. So do you want to start with purpose and intent, and if anyone has comments with that?
Well, does anyone have, yes, in just defining the discussion, do you just want to give some overview comments in response to Manager Solnecker, or do you want to jump right into paragraph by paragraph? What's the group's preference? Yes, yes.
I'd, I'd support talking about it generally and then maybe going through.
Okay, me too. Anyone else? Yeah. Commissioner Olner, would you like to start?
I would.
Although-
I really like this direction. I think it makes a lot of sense to pull it out and sort of make it its own framework that we then flesh out. I like seeing that there's the basic tree risk assessment determined by a certified arborist. I like that that gives the framework for a standardized assessment. That's really important. The in lieu fee will probably, I might have some questions about that, but overall, I think this is a great direction and I'm excited to work on it.
Commissioner Zarro?
Yeah, I agree. I like it. I think it incorporates a lot of what we talked about last time. I think the table, the replacement ratio is really effective and concise. I have a few specific comments or questions. I don't know if, maybe I'll wait until we go through each section to get to those. Okay.
I agree. I repeat.
From a general perspective, I'm, again, really pleased to see the topic coming before us. I agree that it makes a lot more sense to start with its own chapter in our municipal code and keep it all in one place instead of sending someone in various directions in the code. And it's a starting point, and hearing that it might take years to get other aspects going, I'm thinking, well, maybe we might want to flesh this out a little bit more, as opposed to, my original thinking was, we do need to get a stopgap measure, because what I've witnessed in the community is this is a desirable place to live, and people are building houses, and so we do need to get something done very soon. And so those would be the main topics. I do have a question about looking at more in depth about how we approach the idea of not only tree retention, but setting standards like everybody's got to have X amount of tree credits, or something that really elevates the idea that it isn't just what's there and you got to make the most of it, that there's a goal to meet for development, and expanding the thresholds as well for when something like this comes up. So I look forward to diving in. So, and another round, any other general comments? Okay.
Well,
Yes.
I think this is a good start to get, as I've always said in the past, we need something now and work on it later to improve it, as long as we have something, which we don't really have now. We need to do it because there is so much development going. And so this would, right now, protect the city and the trees. And then next year, whatever, you know, if we want to evaluate, but to do a lot of rehashing and trying to find something else, I don't think we should. This is pretty well written. Maybe some of the comments we have to do some stuff, but I think the time is we don't delay. And now we can't vote on it. We have to now wait till February to vote on it, because if we don't have the January meeting, and like I said, we've got developments everywhere right now. I'll do my questions when we come around.
So 2 quick comments, just
Yeah.
from what So, so this, like I said, this is focused right now on the cutting down tree portion of it. It is still on our work plan which will obviously carry into 2026, to work through the rest of the landscaping chapter, or the landscaping section, which is more the, to some extent, especially with new development, what they have to plant and what they have to, what landscaping beds and stuff. So that's still coming. And when I say, my thinking is the idea of a full urban forestry program will take a couple years, because you have to survey all the trees and you have to do public engagement and stuff. So yeah, this is the hope of let's let's get what we know we want and then work on the rest.
So starting, any other general overview comments? Okay. So starting off with page 7 and a discussion of purpose and intent. Any comments, Commissioner Johnson?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Zara? Oler? No. Okay. I will just say I'm glad to see we've got the purpose and intent, because that does begin to express the fact that this is something really meaningful to do and has impact. And if anyone comes across other purpose and intent statements before we get to our next meeting, because I've looked at studies that talk about health benefits, that there's verifiable evidence that this communities with trees are healthier places to live. And so, okay, so we're good with what we've got here at the moment. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, so moving on to definitions. And excuse me, Manager Stolnacker, did you have anything you wanted to emphasize or add to the purpose and intent section?
No, I tried to, again, I tried to cover both the, things that I know people do care about. It was funny when I did the outreach at the Milton Days, all the kids were, you could tell they'd learn on science because they were all like, trees give us oxygen, So, but also do the idea of the stormwater. I know that is very important to this community, and trees are a vital part, tree canopy in general. And then, yes, the whole idea, the last one sort of that is that it's good for our all around health, shading, cooling, everything. So yeah, I tried to kind of, without getting too long, hit what I think is some of the biggest topics.
So going around again on that section, a question just popped in my head as you were talking, which is, do we need to have anything in here that ties it in with the comprehensive plan as a policy document? Is Growth Management Act saying cities of our size have to have a climate sustainability chapter or
I
something?
could definitely add something that says, and support the goals that I'm sure we have. So yeah, that would make sense to add. We're addressing those goals because that is the planning document. So yeah, I'll add something.
Okay, thank you. So on definitions, general comments about the section or questions from anyone? Yes, Commissioner Zaro.
I am wondering about exceptional trees. If I am understanding correctly, it's a full stop. These trees do not come down. Is that the intention?
That's the proposal.
Okay. I'm picturing a lot, and someone wants to build affordable housing. Very important. I'm picturing one exceptional tree right in the middle of that lot. I'd prefer the tree to come down and affordable housing to be constructed.
I guess the hope is, or the thought is, that they could build they're going to have some common area. So could that be where they put the common area? Is where that tree is?
I think that's a nice
maybe
hope.
there, I guess if the suggestion is that we have something in here that allows us, there's always that one weird circumstance. So is there a way to say, under extreme circumstances, they could try to prove they have to take it down, and then they'd have to
Yeah.
do something?
I think if there's one big old tree or a couple or a few that an apartment building would have to work around, I could see them taking their affordable housing somewhere else and not trying to design around said trees. I just think a full stop is too far. But I can appreciate a big tree too.
I saw Commissioner Oler, you had your hand up? Yes.
Yes, I'm thinking about hazard trees, and I think we already know and already was alluded to that is the area that we could see possibly being abused. If I want to remove a tree and it seems like an exceptional tree or a significant tree, well, no problem, I'll just make it a hazard tree and then I can remove it. I really like the basic tree risk assessment determined by a certified arborist, and maybe we go all the way with ISA and any other kinds of assessments of trees, hazard or not. We ask for them to use the same kind of assessment just to give us blanket consistency so that we don't have, I mean, I don't know that this would be a problem, but if we have one standard, it's easier for everybody to understand. And then, yeah, to the point about exceptional trees, I'm actually wondering about this tract that's at the end of 19th. Right now, it is basically probably the last second growth forest in Milton. And I'm wondering how it would impact that not homeowner. Well, I think it is a homeowner. I'm not even sure who owns it, but
But haven't they already
that
put their
parcel.
permit in?
correct. Would that make that forest permanent? So we would need to think about that. Those are the two things I wanted to bring up.
That would be, I should have their tree survey submitted. Yes, I do. So that might be, I would be happy to like take that as a great example to look and see what size those trees are, to see what, if any of them even hit that except, what would it have done to that? I mean, that development's in, it's going forward if they go all the way through because it's already in. But it would be a good real case study of would any of those trees qualify for that? Where do they hit on that? How would that affect if under the proposed document? So I will get that. I'll probably send that to you guys early so you can have some review on that, and always email comments if you have thoughts. And I also, I'll note, Dustin Madden, our Public Works Director, his background is actually like landscaping and everything. And so a lot of times we'll run things by him. So I've been meeting when he has time, which right now is not. But I had thought I was going to have him sort of review this with me and see if he had any thoughts from both having been on the private sector side as well as on this side, if he had any thoughts for that.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
Has there been a study on the ability of fir tree versus deciduous trees on the oxygen type thing? Do broadleaf trees provide more? Even though we've had the fir trees, they tend to be dangerous at times after a certain age here in Milton because of the low roots and stuff like that. So I just wonder, I mean, I understand the thing if there's a tree in the middle and it's one of the old Milton type tall fir trees, but what if it's saying maybe we need a forest that's lower shade and broadleaf versus the fir trees, the big ones. That's a choice as we keep growing and expanding and adding more houses. Is the potential danger of keeping the old trees versus new trees that are broadleaf and provide actually more shade and I think more of a capability environmentally? It's just a thought, I don't know.
The code historically, like from a landscaping side, leans towards deciduous trees. Challenge is people have a tendency to not know how to maintenance them, and then you get these, as my formal consultant used to say, lollipop trees. But theoretically, yes, nice, broad, deciduous with lots of shade are great. But yeah, I can do some.
And that's interesting, they see that, because I see fir trees that aren't taken care of at all.
That too. I'm sure
Yeah.
they don't, but
Yeah.
they're, because deciduous are supposed to be nice and broad, a lot of times they go and chop them
Right.
because they don't let them, but that's the whole point is in parking lots, you want them to provide shade or
Yeah.
along the sidewalk and
But it's just a thought, because I don't think we could ever go back to what Milton was with the fir and the evergreens.
yeah, and the challenge with
Space.
those is if they get too tall, then people get.
Yes. I had a friend that just spent a lot of money because theirs were damaging that, the winds coming from the valley and the roots are low, higher up. And with all this moisture, it's more likely to tip over than a broadleaf tree.
Which, not to get off, like I said, it parallels with it is what we've discovered over the last 40 years is trying to figure out making sure people are putting the right tree in the right spot. And when we get to the planting side of it, there are a couple, Pierce County, City of Tacoma, City of Seattle, they do a really good job of keeping up to date what trees are best in what areas. And so referencing those, maybe referencing those cities that have full-time people to know better of, if you go to, said Pierce County or City of Tacoma, or probably Seattle, it says, if your width is only this much and you have lines and you have this is the type of trees that work. Versus ours just say, this type of tree down the street. Well, that's probably may not be the wisest thing anymore. So, all right.
So I'd like to jump in on the conversation a little and then get us back on track with definitions section.
Yeah, we're getting a little broad.
Yeah, the idea of examples, I think that would be absolutely fabulous to have some recent developments and apply the code as proposed at the moment. I think that would be informative. The other thing to just respond on, if this is simply about retention, perhaps that's something to say in the purpose and intent at the moment, or maybe not. It's just, if that's, I can see the merits of you take it in pieces and
Yes, the
make it the
preserve
best it
route,
can be.
not so much the enhance right now.
So, the idea of having, certified, arborists and people that are recognized as certified people, I don't think getting into definition, we do have certified arborists, so we've listed a few organizations that would be accepted by the city. So that would be, I think that's important. And the idea of, yes, things can become hazard out of a wish for development. I can see where it's like lawyers that, they can defend anything. So, but it's better than what we have at the moment. And if we find something better, we can certainly update this. Landscaping, need examples, agents. Oh, the idea of incentives, and that parallels a bit with what Commissioner Zarl brought up, is what's known obviously and empirically is that it's the low-density developed areas where you have the most trees, and you tend to have a lot of big, beautiful trees. And in managing a forest, I know there's that whole thing of you've got a succession plan of new trees growing to fill the role of trees that eventually have completed their lifespan. In looking at other codes, I've seen that there have been a variety of issues addressing sort of a standard or a hierarchy, sort of like critical areas mitigation standards you got to go through. If you can do this, do this. If not, it works its way down to finally, I'll just leave it at that and just say that I think that's a good idea to put some thought to the idea of the degree to which latitude is given to the city to say, okay, we'll reduce your side yard setback. I mean, I don't want something to become unsafe, but the idea of, as a community value, what makes Milton is we've got quite a significant second growth forest happening here. So perhaps exploring that idea if there is time. I don't want to create an unsafe situation, but the idea of
Yeah, if they
I've
shortened if they were able to reduce the setback from 7.5 to 5 feet, which is still legal by building code, to save a tree on this side,
it's that
it would be worth it.
It's that sort of thing, and I know there's root zone protections and ways to protect the tree that. And then evaluating a tree and interpreting it as, okay, it's this size now, but eventually it's going to be this size and the canopy is going to be so much more. So there's a value in the young trees. and wanting to keep them, and as well as a real value in the, we call them exceptional, some cities call them heritage, but if anyone has some interest in looking into what would be an idea or a concept or an approach, because preserving what the development I have witnessed in the single-family zone is we have lost some really outstanding big trees. And so I'm interested in some sort of a compromise where we could accommodate the interests of the development and the degree to which a developer is, you bring up a good point of, well, the incentive may be there, but the developer might say, nah, no. But it certainly may catch some trees and help them to stay. I think I'd want to see what the ways to work with it before I say, yeah, hard stop is the way to go. I'd like to see if, but I've witnessed some just spectacular trees recently in the last year taken down, and I'd like to weigh towards that side of they have to stay. So that was a note later on where we have tree retention and the discussion of exceptional trees. I had a note about variance. So back to definition, certified arborist, developed lot. I do have a comment about diameter.
About the what?
About diameter, number 3. In the homework that I've done on the topic, I'll submit a few other definitions because not all trees branch off 10 feet off the ground. Sometimes they can branch off low. Sometimes you have, trees that are real close together and eventually they grow. There's ground elevation issues. So I don't know how nitty gritty, but I do know in measuring trees, where you are on the height of that trunk, how far you are above ground level, it can really make a difference. So I think it's a good start, but if I may, and if anyone else comes up with other definitions that might be a little more helpful. And looking at that, I'm assuming that the city will make some sort of a user-friendly handout that says, here's how you measure a tree type of thing, and here's how you plant a tree and such. I had a question about hedge tree. And I've done some reading that cities outright say that doesn't count in the tree credit system. It's not that it's a non-entity, but for their goals of preserving native conifer forests, so to speak, arborvitaes and so forth, they're like, well,
Yes.
it's a hedge, it's not a tree. So I wondered why it was here and nothing further was said about it.
Okay.
Did I miss
It
that?
should have been, and if it's, this is where I get into when you're editing one thing and then you do another. So
Oh, yeah.
The point of putting in hedge tree was to say you cannot use a hedge tree as a replacement tree. And if that got pulled, that was, it was as a little bit under the, it was supposed to say that somewhere. So if it doesn't, and like I said, where is my hedge tree maximum?
It's number 5 on page 7, B5.
So that's where the definition is.
Yeah, that's where the definition is. And then originally I had, I redid the table and it probably got cut. Originally, on the bottom of the table, I had hedge trees cannot be used as replacement trees. So that was my intent. So I will add that language somewhere where it is appropriate. Because that is the thing. An arborvitae, to me, does not, and they will do that. They'll be like, well, we put in 50 arborvitaes. Well, it's not
That's not a tree,
really
that's a hedge.
a tree.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but it's not, depending on who you do. So yes, that was the intent of putting it there, and I think it got cut somewhere else. So I will put, that is where it is supposed to say that hedge trees cannot be used as replacement tree.
Continuing with my first round of comments on definitions. Tree significant, a 12-inch diameter just seems kind of big as a starting threshold, and I was interested in hearing more from folks about.
So ours currently, what does ours currently say? I think ours, So ours currently says deciduous 6 and evergreens at 10, or no, in excess of 10 feet in height. It doesn't diameter at all. So I pulled, let's see. So yeah, ours doesn't deal with diameter for evergreen trees. It only deals with height. And it does have deciduous at 6 inch. This is pulled from Fircrest, which I was a part of when we redid theirs. Again, I think this is something that I don't know if there's any consistent there's flexibility in that. So I was trying to pull in a diameter instead of a height for the evergreen.
How about instead of putting a lot of time to it, we do some, I know I'm interested in just seeing,
Yeah.
so the goal in defining significant trees is that the standard that you think would be most workable at a staff level is to define significant trees with a numeric threshold based on the height of the tree or by the diameter?
I think the diameter.
The diameter of the tree, okay. And so ideas for what that diameter might be.
Yes.
And then healthy deciduous trees,
So my proposal was to move from 6 up to 9.
okay, but again, it's diameter, so keeping them
Diameter.
both at diameters. And, okay,
yeah,
both
so-
of those numbers seem kind of big to me, but I'll do my homework and offer a range.
Yeah,
just
and
to-
again, it
Okay,
there's that point, again, it's a balancing act of, what I'm trying to find is that balance of acknowledging that we do need, people buy property to, in most cases, develop it. So you need to, so they have to be allowed to cut, trees that they need, but we also want to replace trees and preserve what we can. So where's that balance of saying something like, well, if it's this big, you can't do it at all, but if it's this, we're not going to count it against you. Where's that fine line?
It
And
is,
so I was kind of trying to do both, like,
right.
okay, we're not going to care about the 6 inch, but if 30 inch, we are going to, so.
Right. And also replacement. It's,
Mhm.
when you think about a very large diameter tree and say, well, it's a 1-to-1, those ratios matter. Olympia's got quite an extensive user-friendly, a little more detailed for us than a city that's got no arborist and such.
Okay, it does say, well, of course, we're getting ahead of ourselves on definitions.
Okay.
But just quickly on the significant tree part.
Yeah.
It does say, this is where I think, let's see where it is. See about the land removal. Where am I going? Oh, back here. So it does say under H, replacement trees must be a type of similar to the tree being removed. So I think I was thinking that, but I think I will make it very clear that hedge trees don't count as evergreen trees. So, but we can discuss that more when we get
Okay.
to that subsection.
And other comments on
Definitions.
definitions, the tree grove, tree removal, I appreciate seeing an underdeveloped lot from the perspective of, especially that we have a lot of lots that now can be divided to smaller sizes, et cetera. I like that this is, it's a clear way to say if you aren't at full density there, we consider that you're underdeveloped. I don't know if that's a Pierce County Planning Department standard. When I've seen buildable lands reports, they seem to have a unique definition of underdeveloped
Yeah.
lots.
I looked on a couple different things. There's nothing that had necessarily an exact number, though I do pull an exact number under applicability for 1 and 2 family, because I basically say if it's 10,000 square feet or greater. We could put in a more specific number, but it's a little bit on the flexibility, but the idea being that if it could be further divided, and again, I'm basically density, so if you're only at, you can have 12 units per acre and you're only at 6, you're definitely an underdeveloped. Or structure coverage, if you can cover, we can cover 50% or 80% and you're only I think of like Bigfoot Java by Taco Bell. it's this tiny little building and they just paved everything. And something like that to me was, they didn't need that, they just were able to. So maybe those are things that we consider underdeveloped and can kind of control a little bit of not, and there may not have been any trees on that one anyway, but that's a lot that I just think of as completely underdeveloped. It's this one little coffee shop on a very large lot that could have multiple businesses on it, so.
So, and this, well, we'll get to applicability in a moment, but, and undeveloped lot, okay. Anyone else with, so second time around on the topic of definitions, anyone else have any other? Okay. Any further comments from staff on the definition department? Anything that we, well, we can send suggestions in. Okay. Applicability, next section.
So yeah, so basically I'm trying to kind of pull in that it sort of applies to everything. So new residential development, so if you're putting in a new one family, two family ADUs, we're gonna look at the tree standards. Because right now it basically, you can, if it's a one family, two family in our residential lot, there is no replacement for trees. And no real requirement to keep them. It sort of excludes them from everything. And then so new non-residential development, so everything else, or non-residential development expansions that disturb more than 2,500 square feet, which basically is taking what we already say in the landscaping section and just kind of duplicating that here. And then again, 3 is sort of that idea of underdeveloped, is that lots may have a one family or two family structure, but if they're over 10,000 square feet, they were required to retain or plant during development, or they're adjacent to or within a critical area buffer, this still applies to them as well. So that should help protect, again, some of these oversized lots from just going in and cutting everything.
Comments, Commissioner Olin?
Not on applicability.
On applicability, yes.
Nope.
Commissioner Zarro, Commissioner Johnson? Thoughts on applicability? Oh, okay. I'd like to ask any thought from Manager Solnecker on what about somebody who wants to add on to their home? I've seen in some codes where they talk about if you're adding on X amount of square feet, you now fall under the requirements of tree retention or the tree protection standards.
So as proposed, unless your lot was over 10,000 square feet, it wouldn't. Because at some point, there's that challenge with private, once a house is built, there is a challenge of people, how much can you control people cutting down trees on their own property? So the thinking I was like, is if you're a standard lot and you have a standard house, you don't have a lot,
The other issue on, so that was number one, a comment there. Number 2, new non-residential development. And there you talk about non-residential development expansions that disturb more than 2,500 square feet of area. So is that, it's not an existing non-residential site, or is it an existing?
So the second half would be if it's an existing non-residential and they're expanding, at least if they're disturbing more than 2,500 square feet, then they, like I said, I pulled that out of, then they're subject to like the landscaping rules and everything in our current code, so I pulled that in here.
So maybe add that distinction because the sentence starts with the word new non-residential.
Okay,
And
yeah, I was
I
trying to
don't
figure out
know.
how to do it so it sounded, so I'll just maybe putting
Crystal
existing
clear.
will work.
Maybe not, but
Yep.
new non-residential development and existing non-residential development expansion. Obviously, if you're expanding, you're there, but just for the clarity. The 10,000 square foot lot size just seemed to be a little big. as the threshold to start having tree retention?
So my my
3A?
thinking is that idea of falling into that underdeveloped. So we allow, I mean, an 8,000 square foot lot is our standard lot. So I was thinking if it's sort of a lot plus.
Okay.
But again, some of these numbers are semi-arbitrary, so we can,
So I'm curious with item number 3 under applicability. It's an existing two-family home on a lot. The lot is 10,000 square feet or more. Oh, This is dealing with someone coming in and saying, I want to cut down all the trees in my backyard? Is that what this is trying? Okay. So it's
they're
not,
going to put it, yeah, yes.
or they're going to build a new garage or
Yep.
an ADU or whatever. If it's an 8,000 square foot lot and they want to put a detached ADU in, they don't have to retain the trees. That's what I just say.
Well,
But
the idea, I guess, yeah, so 3 is more dealing with just randomly taking things down. Number 1 deals with if you are adding something, if you're adding an ADU, we would look at that. Now, if you're 8,000 and you already took it down, then not. But if you specifically come in and you say, I'm going to add an ADU and I got these trees in the way, then we would say, oh, well, you have to follow all this. So it's a,
Okay.
yeah. But
So,
3 is more with, you're already there, but then you decide you want to take down a whole bunch of trees. Hopefully we can catch them before they do that and say, no, wait, you have a huge lot, you can't just cut. And more people do call us now. I think 10 years ago, everyone just assumed they could take down their trees. We get a lot of calls now like, hey, can I take down this tree that's on my private property? And we're like, well, where is it? And is it not in a buffer? Yeah, you can take it down. Please plant something. So I think, yes, 3 will take definitely some getting out to the community, but I think there is that mindset of both people who cut big trees and property owners that the city might require them to do that. So yes, 3 is basically dealing with existing houses that have existing trees and they're wanting to take, they ask if they can take them down.
Okay, and I appreciate 3C that, and it discussing where that tree is located in relationship to a critical area or a critical area buffer. I think that's important. And I did have a question in general that came up about how does this tailor with our critical areas, landscaping and replacement and
Yeah,
mitigation?
I mean, if you're in a critical area buffer, Title 18 takes precedent over this.
Okay,
But we do have some properties, I was specifically thinking of, we've got properties that are along creeks that they
Right.
just sort of, they don't really think of themselves that way and they've never had studies done. And so again, hoping that this sort of helps with some of that.
okay. So second round robin? Yes, Commissioner Zarro.
On 3C, how are we defining adjacent to? Is that within 10 feet? Is that
Good point.
within, however our
It
hearts
says it's
feel?
applicable, it doesn't say they can or can't, I mean, yeah,
Could we
we could put a number.
pick a number and just say these trees within or within 10 feet of?
Other thoughts on the number? The specifying a distance instead of just saying adjacent
I
to?
mean, theoretically, if it's a critical area, there would be a critical area buffer. So really, it'd be like if you're outside of the buffer.
Right.
So maybe 10 feet of a buffer, you have to.
Any other, okay. Commissioner Oler agrees with 10 feet. Commissioner Johnson?
So critical areas, that's not stormwater. Just our regular critical, the buffers, okay. Okay,
So if there is that buffer, can we just get rid of the within 10 feet and just say you have to be outside of the buffer? Or we're adding a buffer to the buffer?
You're singing my song there. So,
Yeah, so I guess the question is, if there is a critical area buffer, because really, if there's a critical area, the buffer would cover it. Is there an interest in adding just the idea that if they're, let's say, within 10 feet of a buffer, we would also at least be applicable to look at it?
How large is the buffer?
Buffers can be 100, 150 feet, so it may not be necessary.
Oh, well, in that case.
So basically, it would be like, do you
Cases
want to
where
add a
not.
little bit to it?
I think 10 feet would not be anything compared to an actual buffer.
I'll do some more. I'll bring some. I'll think through that one more.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate you're thinking about how to make it a metric that
No, metrics
is
are nice.
really, really nice. And because the more subjectivity in something, the more you're really struggling and it.
Every time the state says reasonable, I just cringe.
Yeah, go, who is this reasonable person they're talking to?
I don't
Who
know
is
any
it?
reasonable people. Zero, literally, none.
But the idea, it could be something, again, as we're exploring ideas for future.
My thinking was maybe, yeah, let me see if there's any situations that wouldn't be covered by Title 18, I guess.
Well, and the other piece of it is, if you're going to save a tree on a property, having it associated with a network, an environment, I mean, to have, if someone, I mean, that could be a negotiation point or.
Yeah, so maybe there's a
I-
section where I say trees like this are are the preferred, so maybe this moves out of here to retention of trees near buffers is your preferred choice or something, so, okay.
More to think about, but the idea of just, because some buffers can be kind of twinky, it all depends upon
And some don't have
the
buffers yet,
wetland
so
rating.
or
or
there's that too.
because critical areas are hazardous slope, right? Earthquake.
Yeah, there's that too.
There's, so,
Slopes, all that good stuff.
yes, okay, so more thinking on that one. So second time around on applicability, anyone? Or did I miscount? Are we on third? Okay, you got to keep me on third. Okay. Okay, so we're on to subsection D, removal of trees outside of a development permit.
So I was trying to deal with the fact I get people who come in. I had one a couple months ago. This guy comes in. He's technically owns 2 lots. His house was on one. Thankfully, the other lot doesn't have a house, and he wanted to take all his trees down. They might all fall in the next storm, and I'm like, no. So in that case, I told him he couldn't. But again, these are questions we get, issues we get. If I had the wrong person, or the right or wrong person, if they could argue with me, I think. And so this is so if someone comes in and says, hey, I this is what you can do outside of I'm building something. And the idea being that usually it's, if it's a hazardous dead or dying tree, that's fine. You can you have to prove it to us. It's going to show it through here, and you can take it out. This is where that defining significant comes into play. And maybe we don't, if they want to remove a tree and we're like, okay, it's a small little, the idea being that there are sometimes just small little sapling trees, fine. You want to kind of clear it out a little bit, that's fine. And if they say, well, for whatever reason, it's, I own it and it's blocking my sun and I really want to take it out, but it does count as a significant tree, well then fine, maybe would be fine, then you need to still do the replacement trees that we require if you were doing a development, and you can take down that 114 diameter tree, but you're going to replace it, you're going to put other trees on that property. So that was sort of my thinking, just if they're not building anything, they're simply coming in for some reason and saying that they want to take down trees. Now, if they come in and they say, I want to clear cut the whole property, it'll be like, no, you don't meet the following criteria, you don't meet the criteria, so no.
So exceptional trees. Is this an area where they're noted, or?
So this is, so basically, under removal,
I'm sorry, I spoke out of turn. I apologize.
So for D, removal of trees, one, we're saying your permit, if there's no development permit, is the clear grading and filling permit. So it says this is what you would fill out. It says you have to have an arborist report if you want to. So you have to hire someone to tell us. We're on page 8. And then in order for the city to approve it, you removing that tree, it has to either be proven that it's hazardous, dead, or dying, that it's not significant or exceptional. So again, if it's just some 2-inch tree that for whatever reason you feel like you want to come down. Or if it does, and maybe I should say if it identifies as a, I can clarify that. The idea being is if it's a significant tree, then you have to do the replacement trees as required by subsection H. That was the intent. So they theoretically could do a significant tree but then they're subject to the replacement that they would have to do if it was similar to a development.
And then exceptional?
So right now,
tree?
exceptional says you can't
Just
at all.
Okay,
Obviously, we're going to discuss that when we get to that section. But
Okay.
under this, you would not be able to.
okay. Okay, so first round robin on the section D, removal of tree or trees outside of a development permit. Yes, Commissioner Oler.
Yes, here's where, and this is just an alignment kind of thing. The intent is already here. Earlier, it does mention in definitions what hazard tree is and that it has to be defined in the ISA Basic Tree Risk Assessment and determined by a certified arborist. And just so that we align everything, here in D2, it says an arborist report, which is slightly less specific, but I'd be satisfied if we're just really clear every time we specify an arborist report that it's a required template of some kind, where we've got the health rating system, risk category, what the defects in the tree are. Maybe photographs come with it. Maybe we require a second opinion if it's an exceptional tree where people, we're like, you can't just get one person to be like, oh yeah, this exceptional tree is, if it's truly an exceptional tree, they need a second opinion. So if we have like really clear standards for what we're expecting as to documentation, and I would also ask for a second opinion for an exceptional tree. Photographic documentation, and then that way we don't have there's nothing subjective, everything's always the same. People know they have to have this complete report, we need to see photographs of it, and if it's an exceptional tree, you can't just get one person to go, oh yeah, this is a hazard tree. We're gonna need like a second opinion, or maybe the opinion from the city, depending. So that would be my
Thank you for that.
druthers there. And that's enough from me for now.
So are you suggesting, Commissioner Oler, that D2, would the issue be addressed if we used what is in our definitions, saying a certified arborist? Since we define certified arborist, would that
I'm
be?
not talking about the certified arborist part, I'm talking about the tree assessment part.
Okay. But who it's to be done by?
Oh, well,
It
it
just
definitely
says
needs to be
arborist
done by a
report.
certified arborist, yes.
Okay.
So we have a list of what we consider a certified arborist, but above and beyond that, we have a list of what we need to see in this tree assessment.
Yes.
And it needs to be the same for everybody, and we need pictures and all of that.
Okay.
So that's kind of like what's required for a tree report or a
Yeah,
site that.
We
And
really
F, I
clearly
have
define our
tree
tree
survey,
report.
but maybe that needs to say tree, yeah. Make sure that all the terms are exactly the same, so I'm not getting, well, you didn't say that here, you didn't say that there.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Other points, questions, comments on? Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
So, person on the street has a lot, they'll understand that this means this is my private property because it's not being developed, that this applies to me, that I'm not building, but I have these trees, and there's an issue with the trees. This is the part of people that have a lot, and there's no development on that lot. So, okay.
Which is much easier. Those are easier to enforce. I just want to clear steps in the code versus somebody who's taking down a tree in their backyard and they have a house.
Right, but this is for the people that have a house on a piece of property, not a vacant lot.
In most cases, D is going to be a vacant lot.
But not all.
Oh.
As you were citing, you were saying, hey, somebody's got a large
It-
lot, they
yeah,
want to
it
cut
could
down some
be
trees.
an underdeveloped lot. It could be an undeveloped lot where it's vacant. It could
Ah.
be what we consider underdeveloped, where, like you said, they've got the equivalent of 4 lots, but they've only got a tiny little house, they would come in, we would go through that process with
Yeah,
them.
let's look at my house. I have a vacant lot to the back of my property. So because my house is on one lot and there's another lot attached to the mortgage, this would apply to my vacant lot.
Correct.
Okay. And as a homeowner, I would have to get the arborist to come in, look at a tree before I could do anything with it, regardless of what tree it is?
If it is, if it's considered a significant tree,
Which is any fir tree. That's 35, that's diameter size.
so, well. when we-
Deciduous.
So if it was a deciduous or a significant tree, right now, depending on what level we do, it'll either be 6 inches or 9 inches or 10 or 12. If
Yeah.
it was at that, on a vacant lot, yes, you would just come in and say, hey, we want to take this down for some reason. And again, if it's under that, you wouldn't necessarily have to.
Okay.
So do you have a concern, like,
No, I just,
or you're just
there
trying
are
to understand
people,
it?
there are people that I'm seeing a lot of tree cutting lately. And I know when we first moved in, of course, I don't know what it was back then, we had a tree in our neighborhood, somebody came through and cut all the top of the trees and took the Christmas parts. And so our tree was dying from the inside. And so.
Oh, I get there too. Basically, I say you can't top trees, but
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what they did. No, I just wanted to make sure that if somebody it was their property, they weren't developing it, they could still not do anything unless they apply to this. Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if a regular citizen would understand it.
And again, if you've got some little pear tree in the backyard and you take it down,
yeah.
nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
What we're trying to get after is those people who have
Right.
a forest back
Right.
there and someone,
Yeah,
comes in and just starts,
yeah,
whether if it's for profit or a lot of times what I get more on the commercial and the industrial land is people are like, oh, I'm just going to cut down the trees, throw gravel and park cars. No, you're not. So anyway.
cool, thank you.
On the topic of
Exceptions?
D, Commissioner Johnson's comment about any tree, and you got me thinking about, what about species of tree? So exemptions would be where that would apply. So in Commissioner Johnson's example, if she had laurel,
Yep.
that she says, I need to cut that down, I'm tired of the berries or whatever. There's no issue there.
Right.
Okay, so I appreciate this idea of D, to try to encourage homeowners, and this is residential and non-residential, right? It's everybody. I am,
And yeah, if you hit the applicable,
yeah,
so it would be residential if you're over 10,000, or if you're 10,000 square feet or more, I guess, if you're single
for
family.
that lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you're vacant.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson?
Mountain laurel rhododendrons, are they considered anything in here but a bush or a tree?
I think they're a bush.
Only
Okay.
rarely are they tall enough to be called a tree rhododendron, and they still probably wouldn't be big enough diameter.
So, okay, so if we're looking at the diameter, okay, I just want, because they are all around,
There's some gorgeous tree
Yeah.
rhododendrons.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother issue.
okay,
But they're not a tree, really.
So another
no
thing
butterfly.
to consider is perhaps there's a list of trees that are wanted for replacement. I've seen some cities that really specify species and replacement ratios per species, because, but on this topic, you may get comments like, well, they're cottonwoods,
Oh,
or there's some other trees that are considered not so groovy, but, I mean, they are part of the ecosystem.
Well, and I specifically actually did some research on cottonwood because yes, I get that. I went round and round with a landscape arborist once, and he didn't think he had to count the cottonwood, but cottonwood are actually very valid, especially wetland trees in this area. So I said, yes, you have to count the cottonwood.
So anyway, that was really just on that paragraph. I'm trying to stay on track and
Yep,
then moving
yep.
on to exemptions. But so the second round, Robin, on paragraph D, anyone have any additional? I see Commissioner Johnson.
I just lost my thought. You know, when we look at the city, we have a comp plan, a vision. So it seems to me, when we look at the trees and the landscape, we would want a vision for the entire city. I'm just thinking out loud right now, like we know we don't want butterfly bushes that can grow into a tree because they're invasive. When we say there's invasive trees, you cannot have any invasive tree. Is this putting also just saying you have to look at another level of the code, that these are trees that are absolutely not allowed as a replacement tree?
And that's kind of, I think that's,
We're jumping ahead.
but no, but I think that's where you were kind of going, and I think that's why you were thinking of it. And my short answer is, I don't think there is wording in here like that, and there should be, so we will.
Well, I was still looking at exceptions. Are we still on D or were we?
We're just finishing up D, and now we're going to
Oh,
exceptions.
I was looking at exceptions, sorry.
Okay, so I don't see anyone wanting to jump in on the second round, Robin, for D, so we're on to E, exemptions, and first round, Robin, on it, Commissioner Oler, yes.
Yes, I like the exemptions. I agree with laurel, English holly, Leyland cypress, and non-native cultivated fruit trees. As we've already just alluded to, there may be some other trees that belong on the exemptions, other non-native trees that are nuisance trees. We could probably just piggyback on anybody that has more staff and more time, as we already talked about a little bit earlier, to maintain a list, like we agree with the Wazoo list from the Cooperative Extension or whatever. That would probably cover us because they keep that very up to date.
So the exemption section is intended to be trees you can cut down without getting a permit.
Mhm.
Yep, so I will, yeah, I can add and trees on, like you said, that are listed on the state's nuisance tree list or something.
Right.
So list the list. Okay.
Use other people's work.
Okay, other comments on exemptions? Yes, Commissioner Zarro.
Are we allowing trees below our significant tree diameter to be removed without a permit?
With hand labor and light equipment.
That's kind of how I interpret all of it, but I don't think it's
me-
explicitly stated.
It's probably not as clear as it should be that there are certain trees you can just take out.
Okay, do you think if we add a number 3 to exemptions that just says any trees smaller
That hit
than,
certain criteria.
yeah.
Yeah. Just to make it clear.
And it may be what's floating through my head is maybe something like, if you're under this significant tree size on a developed lot, you don't need anything or something.
Yeah, I agree.
Versus vacant lots, I really want them to come in and get a permit, even if they're taking down trees that are small, and I'm gonna say yes, because I wanna make sure that's all they're doing. So I'll play with some language on, because yeah, I mean, it's like, if it's a developed and there's a house or a duplex or apartments, and it wasn't a required tree and it's sort of undersized, they don't necessarily need to come in and get something from us, but I don't, vacant lots is what I'm really worried about for just,
Yeah.
all right,
Okay.
I'll play with that.
So any other, thoughts on exemptions? We're on our first round. Is there, I like the idea of the list, but we're going to have to pay attention to it because as you just, as Manager Stallnacker just mentioned, cottonwoods they are part of a succession of trees in an ecosystem, and we have the High Labos Creek and associated riparian shoreline that, would have those trees that like to be in soggy soil kind of thing. So we may really need to have a smart landscape or arborist person think about that. But the other thing is the size issue. I think that's a valid point as well, because I was reading this as the only trees that are being retained are the ones that meet the definition of exceptional or significant. But I'm getting a sense that that's not quite what you were thinking when you were saying.
No, my thinking is the replacement, you only have to, the replacement only applies to those trees that are significant.
Replacement.
So if it's under, you can remove it, you don't have to replace. So then if you came in for a permit and you're just wanting to remove a couple small trees, we'd give you a permit, you don't have to replace them because they're undersized. But is there times when we don't even need the permit because that's time and, I don't necessarily want to make a homeowner, and I think we'd have a really hard time enforcing it if a homeowner's taking out, they've got a 2-inch something that's, we get those over here, that fir tree over there. I swear in a year that, some sprout will go and you've got a couple inches and you're like, okay, we're going to hack that down. I don't want them to feel like they have to come in and do a permit or us going. So yeah, there's that line of when do they need a permit, when do they don't, when do they have to replace, when do they don't, that I'll try to work on clarifying that a little better based on what I'm hearing.
So are we ready to move on to letter F?
Yes.
We didn't do the second round, but it seems like a few folks were done. Okay, tree survey.
So
Comments.
just trying to define, and maybe, like I said, maybe it's tree assessment, maybe it's tree report, but trying to put in writing what the expectations are that they have to provide us so that we can adequately review the trees that they want to take down, replace. Because right now I get a wide variety of stuff that people think is a tree report.
So first round on the round robin, Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioner Oler.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Johnson?
When we look at, I lost my space. When we talked about the size of the tree, map the tree with locations and number them, will the number include the diameter of the tree and a photo?
So the first part is the map, the second part is assessment, which would be size, measure and provide the diameters defined in this section.
But they'll be tied together,
Yeah.
the number to the measure. Okay. And what's CMC?
Oh, that's who I stole it from?
So what?
That's the, whatever code I borrowed this information from, so I need to change that.
Okay. And
To whatever ours is, and if we don't have one, I need to make a definition for it. Do I have one definition for it? I think I do.
No, we don't.
Oh, do I not?
And so the assessment, also, when we talk about the health of the tree, is all from the arborist?
Yes.
Okay. And so the goal really is trying to preserve as many of these trees as we can. And a hazardous tree is defined as more than two, more than three characteristics of a hazardous tree. Could it be, is it a hazard because its limbs are falling down when a wind blows, or is it a hazard because we see it rotting? Is it a hazard because the roots are above the ground and going into another yard of a person? I'm just wondering.
So I
That's
think
just
this-
all about
Yeah, I
it.
think that's where I need to track it back to our definition,
Okay,
because, yeah, that leaves it a little bit vague.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Oler, on the topic of tree survey, paragraph F.
Yes, and it's just probably a continuation of what I was saying earlier about, which we've already talked about, standardizing what we consider a proper assessment from a certified arborist. But the other thing I was wondering about is the calculation of canopy, because we do talk about that later, and it's not really talked about in the tree survey, and it's going to be interesting to know how they calculate the canopy.
Calculate what?
Tree canopy?
Oh, canopy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that plays into, and we'll talk about it a little later, that plays into some of the definitions later. So how, if we can give them directions on how we expect them to calculate tree canopy under tree survey, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, off-site tree canopies, okay.
yeah.
Where's off-site tree canopy in print?
Inventory, so
Inventory.
1B.
Got it, okay.
This is what happens. This is why these are good, because like I said, I borrow from here.
Yeah. And I don't know how we feel about, do we want to see root zones as well? I don't know that we talk about root zones later, but that can also impact, of course, paved areas, sidewalks, relation to like how close it is to the home, the foundation, that kind of thing. Just a thought. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's probably enough for me for the moment. Pass on to the next.
Nice, okay. Commissioner Zahro, anything on the tree survey? So I agree with the comments so far. The issue of standardizing what's required, much like a wetland assessment from, these things matter, and a consistent measuring program is really the way to make it fair. As reading I've done about tree canopy has been, it's a drip line. That you look up the drip line, that's the size of the tree canopy, and you think about how big will the tree get for some tree programs
yes.
and such. To get more trees, or to have a credit system that someone says, you have to have X amount of percentage of your lot with a tree canopy, and then they create a credit system. And so it becomes, how it's calculated is so critical, just like diameter, how is it measured?
Yeah, so I think the way they use canopy is the way we have used tree grove, which I do define. So I'll play to make, again, consistency through this. So I appreciate when you guys finding those things.
The other issue in my study, number 2, assessment, subparagraph C, tree health. I did some reading, and a point was brought out about viable versus viability. And the thought was, well, what's the current condition, and will this tree survive development? Will this tree survive once the development happens? And so it just got me really thinking about tree health in terms of, we can,
Not retainable with mitigations.
yeah, but that idea of, we can keep this tree, but by the time they get done with all of their heavy equipment, they've so compacted the soil, there's no water and oxygen getting to the roots. And
And
so
while they're supposed to protect those trees, they're not. The other side I get to is I get a lot of neighbors when they take down, maybe there's 6 trees and they take down 5, and then the one that's left, they're very concerned, is it going to fall on my house? And
does
so,
that make it a hazard? And so having real standards about how you define a hazardous tree is all the more important. And then if hazardous, then evaluation. Okay. So, and this tree survey is utilized with underdeveloped lots that are over 10,000 square feet and undeveloped lots of any size.
yes.
Okay. Is this also used, as was mentioned earlier, on determining what a hazardous tree is.
In essence, yes, it would be an abbreviated version, but the idea is that they, they don't necessarily have to do a tree survey over the whole property if they're only discussing one tree, but they would need to provide us, here's the lot, here's where that tree is located, we went out and we tested it, and this is the pictures, and this is why we've determined it's dying and there's no way to save it, so yes, let it be taken out.
Is there, in thinking about adjoining properties, and tree roots do go cross property lines, they don't know those boundaries. So a development happens in a hypothetical, tree roots on, the development on the adjoining property damages the tree on a neighbor's property because they've just gone along and done some terrace, they've done some real earth moving. I don't know how to address that or to do a heads up and just in analyzing a development and saying, well, where are you going to bring your bulldozers in or your excavators? And I've had the opportunity to watch the intensity of heavy equipment that can arrive at a site, and it's stunning. So in watching that and then thinking about adjoining property owners and realizing what they're doing there is affecting the adjoining property owner.
Yeah, so that's where
So-
that's where we got into that, where I need to fix the language, but the inventory does say it needs to include any off-site trees that may be subject, so that they're either overhanging, and kind of the idea is usually, like you're saying, you're thinking that the tree drip system, so wherever they overhang is probably the bulk of what is going to be if they're damaging that. So those should come in as well on the tree survey so that we can try to avoid those and protect those as we can.
But there is that issue of adjoining property owners have the right to take their fence line up into, another 50 feet up there and say, my neighbor's tree, I don't want them overhanging my fence. So you end up with that. But I know we get into the weeds on things, but in case it sparks a sense of maybe
No,
we
and
need
there
a
is,
few
I get those
words.
questions, and there is kind of the way, it's interesting, the way the state law reads is it's kind of like, you can as long as you don't kill the tree. So yes, you can sort of trim back on your side of your property as long as as long as you're not killing the tree. So there's that, but it becomes a civil issue, not a city enforcement issue. But there is some language that is sort of trying to figure out how do you balance that of, yes, you can cut back, but you can't, poison or purpose
Do a hack job that
or
invites
purposely try to.
problems, yes.
to
Okay,
kill.
so that's round one. Round two on tree survey, paragraph F. Any additional comments? Any additional observations from staff? Oh, Commissioner Johnson?
We don't talk about electrical lines, power lines on the survey, and the trees that are put in the front yard that there goes over the power lines. So I'm just curious.
So this would be trees that are existing.
Right.
That could be part of the hazard assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I
guess.
suppose if they came in and said, hey, there's power lines here, that's our reasoning for wanting to cut it down, I would assume they would provide that. Obviously, when we go to replacement, they have to provide us landscaping plans, and then we do look at where lines are to figure
I
out.
mean, for me, what I'd like, and I'm not recalling right now, that trees are kept away from them because of the cost it takes for trees over and the loss of power and stuff. I see people planting small things underneath the trees and and I go, why are you planting it there? Plant it further in the yard. Yeah, the canopy may do it over, but it's better. And I don't know how you can restrict that.
Like I said, that falls more, you're talking more about when they do the replacement tree plantings.
Or any,
Yeah. So that, yeah.
And in development, a new development, keep it away from, if there's power lines and everything
and
else.
so if under the landscaping rules right now, which again, they need some fluffing up as well,
Okay.
but it specifically says, like, if you're doing street trees,
Right,
there are different trees if there are power lines versus if there's
right.
not power
They can only
lines.
grow so tall.
The idea being that, yeah.
Okay, so looking at our time, we're approaching
Yeah.
7:30 or?
Get
Yep.
through all this.
So, any other second round robin on tree survey paragraph? Nope, okay. First round robin on tree retention.
Nope.
We brought up the topic already of looking into some wiggle room about exceptional trees shall be preserved if there's a circumstance where there's some kind of discretion about allowing other building envelope standards or dimensional standard. I mean, I've seen some codes that say, well, to preserve the tree, we'll let you go taller. Or, that, and then you got to think about, well, yeah, but then if accidentally the tree dies, some incentives or, give and take can have their loopholes as well. Sorry we have to think that way, but anyway, so that was brought up. Tree retention, 35% of significant trees shall be preserved.
So this is for full transparency. The way this is written is that exceptional trees have to be preserved. There's no replacement for them.
No replacement.
You're only required to, or not only, you are required to retain 35% of whatever we determine as significant. If you need to, if you can't do that, that's when the replacement kicks in. So if you have, whatever, I guess, if you have 3 trees that are significant, theoretically you could take down 2 and not have to replace any the way this is written. Because you're retaining roughly a third. If you want to cut down all 3, then for that third tree, it would kick in. So it's not all significant trees the way this is written, it's only the 35%. So again, that's something we need to think about is, do we want all significant trees have to have a replacement? But again, then you start getting into, you realistically cannot, depending on how many trees are on a property, you can't always do that. And you've got one property that has 2 trees and you've got another property that has 50 trees. So trying to find that balance. Again, that's a number that was used in another jurisdiction. That number could go up, it could go down. We could rethink exactly. We could say you have to retain 35% and still replace half.
So at round robin number 1, thoughts on the idea? Tree retention?
I'm good.
1,
good for
2,
now.
3. Thoughts? Yes, Commissioner Zarro.
G2, 35%. I would suggest increasing it to 50 for the sake of increasing it and for the sake of having an even number. 35%, I think, yeah, you'd have to have 70 trees to
Make it
that makes
significant.
sense. Yeah. I think just saying half would be a lot more straightforward.
And and then they would, that also increases the likelihood that they probably will want less than that. They would have to do replacements for anything less than 50%.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so I see head nods on the 50%, in agreement with that number. I appreciate seeing it expanded. I do have a question. We're talking about quantity of trees.
Yes.
We're not talking about tree canopy or, hey, you got tree credits. And we're not using a tree credit system, but it got me, I went off in directions.
I know. He could go all over the place. This was just, my thinking was just number of trees. I suppose you could look at diameter of, I was just going off of number.
Because it is the canopy that makes the difference. It is the size of the canopy that makes the difference. So yeah, that's interesting to think of it that way.
You could, again, just playing out things to think on your brain, because it's what my brain does. Let's say, if you've got 10 trees and half of them are 6-inch and half of them are 12-inch, theoretically you could take down the 12 inches. Now you'd have a higher replacement value and keep the 6. Or do you say it's the total of diameter? I don't know. Which is kind of getting at that tree canopy, because there's only, you can't completely measure that. That gets real hard.
I like keeping it as number. I think it's straightforward.
Yeah,
I
it's
think we
easier.
could expand it and expand it and expand it, and it's just becomes too much to keep track of and to measure. I think
Theoretically, the bigger the tree you cut down, the more, so in some ways it may actually encourage them to keep the bigger trees because the replacement value is less if you're keeping the versus the smaller trees.
I mean, and there is a difference between like a columnar tree will have less canopy than a big branching tree.
Yeah.
So perhaps the wording to, so the commission, what I'm hearing is saying, siding on the idea of the quantity of trees, not a quantity of the accumulated diameter, like you took all the trees, you added up all their diameters and then
Yeah.
put that in half, okay. And we can see how it works and revisit it over time, but if the number is the issue, then it needs to be 50% of the quantity or the number of, so there isn't confusion there. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Commissioner Johnson,
Nope, I'm fine.
tree retention, 1, 2, 3.
And this is where, again, on 3, I did put at least the idea that keeping the trees together, if you've got a group of trees versus a bunch of ice,
Yeah.
is the priority, which would make sense. You would think that would benefit them as well.
Yeah.
But it's here in writing. So when we look at it, we can say, hey, we've acknowledged this is a priority.
So I'll add on the first round, Robin, the tree grove concept. What I didn't see is, as earlier mentioned, spacing.
As what?
A spacing. So when you say a tree grove, does that mean that the branches are touching one another? What's meant by a grove beyond the number of them?
A grouping of 5 or more significant and/or exceptional trees with contiguous canopy
contiguous.
cover and must be considered part of a group when
Okay, so to some degree, they're touching. So 2 branches touching.
the canopy itself.
And are we okay with 5 or more? Or do we want, so the idea is, again, I took the definition from somebody. So the idea is that you kind of take it as a group.
Yeah, I'd go for smaller, but given we have smaller lots,
I mean,
protecting a grove
there
of
is
3
something to be
trees.
said for, even if it's 3 trees together is better than 3 spread out trees.
Classically, people plant 3 birch trees together.
So we will say 3 or more.
How's that?
Deal.
Okay, deal. Okay, so the definition on page 8 for number 9, tree grove, is now being changed to
3 or
3
more.
or more. Okay. All right, so any other second round robin on tree retention? No? Okay, so moving on to tree replacement.
So, yeah, so this is where we get it. So basically, the idea is, if they're like, okay, we can only save 40% because of whatever we're trying to do, then they need to replace the 10%. So the idea is that they have to replace, so number 1 says they have to replace with a type similar to being removed or better. Something comparable or greater to benefit. So that's where I was kind of like, do I need to say hedge trees? But I will, just to be clear. So the idea is that they can't come back with puny little trees when they're taking out something of more significance. Number 2 talks about the replacement ratio. Again, it does lower it a little bit from what we have, or increase it depending on how you want to say, from what we have now. So those numbers can be played with. It specifically says that required street trees and parking lot trees are not counted. These are in addition to the landscaping requirements we already have. Not just because they choose, but if best landscaping practices say they have too many trees to replace, because again, most trees are supposed to be maybe 30 feet on center or something, and so they've done all that and they still have 5 extra trees. Basically, it's saying they may do an in lieu of fee, which again, I from what I've talked to our attorneys, we can do this through our deviation process, that they could then pay the cost of the tree plus the installation costs established by a professional landscaper, architect, or landscaping contractor. And then that would go into a fund. The finance director will, eventually we would probably create a fund that specifically says in lieu of tree fund. And then my thinking being that, again, those funds could be used on public property, right of way. Maybe, I'm trying to leave it somewhat vague to give us some possibilities. Maybe we are able to, I know Tacoma gives out coupons so that people who don't have trees can go buy a tree to plant on their property. So basically we can use that fund to, again, kind of improve the canopy. I thought I had, but I'm not seeing it, so I'm wondering if it didn't make it into this version. I had played with the idea, and I think we had discussed it at the last meeting, of maybe saying, or I guess it kind of says here, I guess it's under the replacement plantings. The idea that like if you cut down an evergreen tree, you can either do one tree that's taller or two trees that are shorter. So it sort of gives the incentive to hopefully maybe get some bigger, more established trees, you know? So like here it says 1 10-foot or 2 between 6 and 10, 2 10-foot or 4. So it's like the incentive is to hopefully you do fewer trees if you can get them a little bit bigger, with the hope that we don't have that for the deciduous. So I can play with that.
So, thank you for that. So starting on page 9, H, tree replacement, yes. Commissioner Oler.
Yes, I have a few things, and this is so minor, and this is just a little, when they say 2-inch caliper trees, they mean diameter, right? That's diameter, so it's the same. Just verbiage to align caliper with diameter for the deciduous trees replacement plantings. Then the other thing is I'm a little worried about if it's easier to pay the in lieu of fee every time someone will choose to do that. So if they're like, oh, replacement tree, and I can get these 2 cheap trees, well, screw it, I'm going to knock down all the trees, and I'm just going to give the city this $50. Maybe we make that more of a pain point. Or be like, you know what, you have to replace the canopy. So the pay would be to replace the canopy that was lost, and we have some kind of canopy calculation that then gets paid to the city.
So part of what I was trying to put in here is that they can only do it if they can demonstrate that to replant any more trees on the property would exceed best landscaping practices. So they can't just choose to, they would have to go through our deviation process and make the case. That was the intent. I
Okay.
can make that more obvious if that would help.
Okay.
Or we could add to, or we can consider some more,
The in lieu of fee
I guess,
shall
I don't know if
include-
penalties is the right word, but decentivize.
Yeah,
in lieu of.
decentivize. The in lieu of fee should include the cost of a comparable canopy somehow.
And we don't have a
Other
definition.
thoughts?
And we don't have a definition for canopy then.
We
That
have,
also
we
makes-
have Grove, so I need
Yeah.
to,
Okay.
We talked about that. Well, the other thing too is
It's
like,
not in the.
yeah,
it's-
I need to use, we'll pick one. And
Okay.
yeah, we
Maybe
talked
we
about-
switch to canopy, but I will.
maybe it's canopy or whatever it is, whatever. But like we could also think about, and maybe this is going a little farther afield than we want to right now, but what are our canopy goals as an entire city? Like, do we want 35% for the entire city? And then we seek to go towards that goal, and then that's like so clearly the goal.
And that's where I do, I think this is our first step. Like I said, as I've tried to pitch this as the stop gate, because I do think we do, want, there is value and there's a lot of resources right now, and we're all encouraged to start engaging with the community to come up with that, so that it really is the community saying, no, we do value this. I think they do.
We do, yeah.
But to go through those steps so we can show, look, we did, and both, like I said, both the state, DNR, Pierce County, City of Tacoma, they all have specialists that have developed plans on how to do this. They are more than happy to help the smaller communities. So this is that first step. Meeting at Milton Days was another one of those first steps. So and we could put language in here that says, this, you know, somehow that the city is working towards a full urban canopy plan or something. We could,
Yeah. I think, I like that, because I think that is the goal. And I do like that the city will then have this fund to plant trees and to help private property owners who may not be able to afford the trees, plant trees. I really like that. I really like 4B. So. The other thing that we may run into is the replacement trees shall remain in a, this is 5, replacement trees shall remain in a healthy condition for a minimum of 5 years after installation. Milton, bless our hearts, where we always have stumbled is in the enforcement part. And I'm not blaming anybody, it just seems to be how it happens. It's been really hard for the city to enforce its own guidelines and rules for whatever reason over the years, before any of us were ever involved in any of this. So any time we put something like that in, it's just considering the impacts to staff. How are we going to ensure that happens? You know, that's what I worry about.
I have an idea.
Yes.
They tag trees in forest. So maybe every tree that's a replacement tree has to carry in the date. And it's the metal thing they just put on a
The
tree.
little tag.
It's the tag that states the year the tree was planted.
Maybe we have tree
Because how else you
guardians who
gonna
like,
track
I
it?"
volunteer to be a tree guardian and I'm going to go visit.
We need the tree elves.
I'm a nosy neighbor. Show me your trees.
Additional concerns, Commissioner Oler?
That's probably good for me.
Very good, okay. Concerns, Commissioner Zara?
Yes, real quick. In lieu of, if they choose to, if the options are paying that cost, if we make that higher or too high, the other option is to plant more trees against best landscaping practices.
sorry,
That's okay.
I have called the hall tomorrow. They're picking up all my junk. Yeah, so it's,
And who's defining best landscaping practices?
no, there's that too. Well, because they have to turn in a landscaping plan that is by a certified landscaper as
Okay.
part of that part. So yeah, so maybe consider, like you said, there, maybe give a couple options, like you could put in a more established tree for that. Like maybe there, you know, this is your we talked about, like, this is your steps. Your first step is to put them all on the property. Second would be to make more established trees, and that equals a, you know, instead of 5 little trees, you can put in 3 big trees. And then the third option, after you've gone through all that, would be if there's any trees left or something. So I'll play with that to kind of incentivize good quality trees, and then if you have to, because too often what has happened, I think, in the contrast to that is, I think what has happened in the past is they've come and said, well, we can't plant any more trees because of this, and so they've used it to just not have to do anything beyond what they've planted. So we're not getting anything for that. So that's kind of where the in lieu of came of, is at least they can pay us,
Right.
and we can plant them someplace else.
Yeah.
Other concerns, Commissioner Zorro?
Nope.
First round robin, Commissioner Johnson on tree replacement. Any thoughts?
Nope.
Okay, I've got a few. Relative to the fee in lieu, I agree that this becomes an easy way to just, you know, do what you want to do and just pay it's just the cost of doing business kind of thing, when our goal is to preserve, retain trees and enhance the tree canopy. So I would encourage, the option should be prefaced with a statement that specifies the priority for on-site replacement trees. Like, we have something that says, when you have to replace a tree, the first thing to be considered is it has to be on site. You can't say, well, yeah, I'll just, or I'll do these replacement trees, but Milton, you can go put them in the right of way. We're trying to keep it on site. So stronger language, specifying a priority. On site is the first thing. And then the other issue is, as I add on to other things here quickly, arborist quality. I can remember speaking to an urban forester who said, you know, you can go to a home improvement center and get a pretty poor excuse for a tree, and some cities have said, well, we didn't set a standard for the quality of the tree. The no hedge trees should be specified as
Or
not
clarified.
allowed. The other thing about, and it's relative to the getting to the point of saying, well, I can't do it on site, it's got to be in the neighborhood. I think it's what I'm witnessing in parts of town is the parts of town that were unique for the extensive number of trees and the height and the maturity and such, they get all clear cut, and then, well, we have a few more lollipop trees on Milton Way. It's like, that's not fair. So there should be a priority, I think, that should be that it needs as best as possible close to the site or in the neighborhood. And how do you define neighborhood? It can be a conversation, but something that just doesn't amount to an exodus of trees where we've got them, and then, you know, the neighborhood loses the health benefits, the beauty, the cooling, et cetera. Let's see, so that hierarchy of where the money goes. The other thing, and it's a bit of a backtrack, but it's been in the back of my mind, is in applicability, I'll just put it as a question to you, unit lot development. So do these rules, are they set up for the parent lot? Or, and it's just a question, is that issue of unit lot development, how will that work in with this process? And I don't need an answer now, but it's been in the back of my mind as I've observed what's going on. So the other thing about page 10, item number 5, director, 5B, the director shall have the right to inspect the health and condition. Doesn't that put the onus on a staff person or, you know, somebody who's not a tree specialist? And that seems, I mean, I can appreciate looking at it and say, well, I don't have to hire an arborist, but it just seems,
So it should, yeah, it should just be something like the director has the right to request I mean, not that they have to do the inspection, but the idea is that the city can inspect these trees is the intent, so.
but do we have somebody who has the credentials or the skills to say, yeah, that tree is on its way out, or that planting has failed? So more food for thought about that. And I know there's a balance in equity and thinking about people resisting it because, man, just to turn around and prune my tree, I got to hire an arborist. Well, how expensive is it that you're pruning? So it's finding that balance. And as far as the minimum tree replacement ratio, I'll send in some suggestions because what I don't see is the concept of, you know, a tree that's a really big tree with a big canopy. It seems like there needs to be a better ratio set up, especially with species, and I can provide you a list on that. I never really thought about, you know, a tree at full maturity, you know, it varies by species and therefore replacement equity on that. So, okay. Any other thoughts on tree replacement from folks in the moment? Okay. The last page, 11, significant tree and grove protection. And before I go any further, we've been talking about tree canopy. One tree can have a canopy. So I keep hearing, and I might be misunderstanding people saying, well, we've covered it in tree grove, but an individual tree has its own canopy. So I'm
So we need to play with
thinking
what,
about
yeah.
having a definition for tree canopy that specifies how it is measured. But, okay, sorry, I apologize for backtracking there, but on page 11, significant tree and tree grove protection.
So that is the existing code.
Okay,
So that was just for comparison, and I apologize, I didn't, It's really in small letters, City of Milton. It should have been, but that's, yes. That's because I'm always trying to get these out at the last minute, making last minute changes. So that's just what we currently have, so you could compare the two and how small it is versus what we're proposing.
Okay.
Great.
4 pages.
G is current state, former state. Good. All right.
Okay, so we've covered this topic for the evening. Any closing comments from folks? Okay, so B for our regular agenda is the January meeting conflict. Folks, bring out your calendars.
So-
What is the
So
conflict?
I will be on a cruise. I will be on vacation on that date. It's also, obviously, we're in the process of advertising for some new planning commission members. It's a transition with the council. So I had suggested maybe we just cancel the January meeting coming back in February. I would be happy to send out sort of early January and, before I leave, maybe some revisions on this if people want to be able to look at it and think about it and make some comments and stuff through January on the tree stuff, with the idea that February we could hold the public hearing. If everyone loves it, you could vote on it in February because we would have had it, or we have a few more and we push it off until March. But we could have it ready if, in theory, people are pretty comfortable with it in February if we wanted to. So that was my suggestion.
So how do other commissioners, so what would some other options be? We have the meeting in your absence. We can,
You can,
If-
or you could have it later in January.
okay, or we could have it later in January.
I'd say later in January for me.
Versus canceling.
It's already smack dab in the middle of January, January 14. And so the one in February looks like it's February 11. So
Counseling's fine.
So canceling is fine with Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Zorro,
Same.
Commissioner Bowler. Okay,
She's-
so,
But she said she would send us something to read so we'd be ready to roll so the public hearing could be held.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
okay, all right. So the decision is, and may I have a motion to cancel the meeting?
I move to cancel the January 14th Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made by Commissioner Oler, seconded by Commissioner Zorro, to cancel the Planning Commission's regularly scheduled commission meeting in January 14, 2026. Any discussion? All those in favor of canceling the meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. So no meeting on the 14th. Okay,
And then it was recommended that, again, because we only have 4 tonight, we're missing 1, we're hopefully getting a couple more, that we just move the elections to in this case, the February meeting, which kind of made sense as well. And I didn't provide you with any of the documentation. So if everyone's okay with that, we will do that in February.
so our bylaws do allow us flexibility at the end of the year or as soon as possible thereafter. So moving the election to the February meeting would be the net result. And that, as I understand our bylaws, is okay.
Yep.
And so can I have a motion, please, to postpone the election of officers, commissioner offices, to the February meeting?
I move to postpone the commission office elections to the 2026 February meeting.
So seconded.
Okay. Motion's been made by Commissioner Zorro, seconded by Commissioner Oler, to postpone elections for commission offices until February 11, 2026. Any discussion? Comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Last thing on our regular agenda was to just begin that conversation, not to get into much depth, but to encourage commissioners to start compiling a list of ideas and staff as well.
Well, and
for
like I said,
work
I
plan.
will, I can send out, probably tomorrow, I can send out our current work plan of what's left on it from 2025 as a starter of, are we still happy with what's left on it? And what we still have to do, and then, yeah, then that way we would have a good, then everyone could think through that as we go into February, where we would be talking about the work plan, so.
And the other thing would be if you could add to that the horizon for when we get back into that routine of, okay, time to update the critical areas, the big picture.
Okay.
Or the Shoreline Master Program, or those big ones that just, it just feels weird to not have a big project like that before us.
So nice.
So that would be the other thing, of just sort of a heads up of,
Okay.
and that might inform what we do in the interim.
Yep.
As well. Okay. So work plan discussion, any further comments? Okay, completed. Now we're on to item 7 for tonight's agenda, staff reports.
Yes, so I did want to let you know, so one of the things that we did come out of the comprehensive plan was this idea that a desire to do a sub-area plan for the business zone along Highway 99. We, last year, or this, I guess technically it's still 2025, but the council had, we have a contract with a grant writer, and she is currently working on a grant with, she had reached out to the Department of Commerce, and it sounds like there is a sub-agency within the Department of Commerce that, technically it's grants for rural cities for economic development, but if you're under 10,000, they consider you a rural city. My guess is they must have enough money that they're willing to, so anyway, it looks like that, it sounded pretty much like you fill out the application correctly and you get this money. I believe there's a 20% match. So I think they give us 7,500 and then we would match that with 20%. And that's just for planning. And so it looks like probably by the middle of next year, we should hopefully be able to start that process of a sub area. We do also, we have Framework is our sort of contract planning service, so we can continue to use them for that kind of thing. So the idea would be that we would start that sub area plan for that area, really get involved with those those property owners, hopefully get a feel of what they're wanting versus what we're wanting. We've done a lot of work now with Sound Transit because they'll be going 99. We've actually been focusing on what those frontage streets would look like, sidewalks, so we'll be able to use that. Is all of this playing in? So and then it sounds like that this, it's an acronym, but the agency that we're getting this grant from for economics, they also will do grants to actually develop certain things, like a couple $1 million if you hit the right triggers. So that's part of what our grant writer, Kristen, is looking at, is not only us qualifying, but what are those things they might fund, and do we hit any of those? Because it talks about infrastructure. So are there infrastructure we need? Does sidewalks count for that? I don't know. So she's trying to see so that when we do that grant and we do that sub-area plan, that we are also keep being conscious of what could we possibly get additional funding for to actually develop. And that is perfect because that area is for economic growth. That's what that whole area is. Anyway, so I'm a little excited about that. I'm excited too that she's doing all the work for me. And then we will, so assuming that, it sounds like I said, we probably wouldn't, if everything hits right, because you have to hit with their meetings and this and that, and probably wouldn't get the funding till the middle of the year. And then we would start out with that, but then obviously we would keep the planning commission in the loop because eventually that sub-area plan would be zoning changes, possibly use changes, design guidelines for that area, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that was my excitement for the day.
Okay, so we're on to commissioner reports. Commissioner Oler, would you like to start us off?
Yes, please stay safe out there. They're evacuating parts of Sumner and Puyallup as well as Orting as we speak. It's kind of hairy, so Please be careful.
Okay. Commissioner Zarro?
Nothing from me.
Commissioner Johnson?
I would just like to say, I think we've had a very good year. And what only concerns me is why aren't more people in the city stepping up to participate in city government? And, when we look at the election for council unopposed, we don't have, I don't know if we have people applying now for the 2 positions on the council, but it is sad that people are either so stressed or just hopeless that they don't want to participate. So I hope people out there, if you're beginning, this is a good one to start with for the city. And we really need some people. I've worked on some people. I've pulled one in from before. I'm still trying.
Okay, thank you. For that, 2 general themes. First is to say thank you to all of you for excusing me for some meetings over the year. Life has been extremely complicated, and I will leave it at that, just to say thank you very much for your
Yep.
patience and understanding. And it seems things are going to be a smoother sailing
Good for you.
going forward. The other thing is what I've observed with issues that have come up, and they may not be things that the Planning Commission is involved with, but I'd just love to get it on the record for staff to consider. Witnessing a redevelopment of properties, it seems that there needs to be a stronger requirement with thresholds for a survey to be done. If there isn't a fence in place, people start guessing and it gets to be a civil issue, I understand, but I think we could avoid some problems and give the city assurance that, yes, the setbacks are being met. I won't go into a lot of detail, but to see people bulldozing other people's property and, well, I thought it was mine. It's just, there's got to be, there really needs to be a stronger threshold for that, in my opinion. The other thing, with all the rain, it's made me pay attention as several driveways through Milton I've seen are getting paved. I've already mentioned it to Director Madden, but just put it on the record to just say our driveway engineering standards need some improving, and what I've witnessed is driveways, when they're paved flat and you're uphill, it's just a sluice to send water right into your neighbor's driveway, and now it's your downhill neighbor's problem. And so that idea of treating the driveway like a road, and you have curb or a pitch or a crown or something that gets the uphill properties with downhill driveways, getting that water into the storm drainage system as is appropriate. The other thing, over the summer of witnessing development, I really would like to see us improve our standards with developers, builders, contractors cleaning up their mess. And I don't know if, and I made an assumption that it would apply to everybody, but apparently it only applies to really big projects. And it's really a bummer to have redevelopment happening in an existing neighborhood with infill, and these trucks are just rolling by, shedding lots of dirt, and there should be something about cleaning up their mess and respecting property lines and not dumping their mess onto other properties. So it's been interesting to observe the trouble, and also I hope that the city will take a look at our noise ordinance. I know you can do things to work on property 24 hours a day, but a nail gun going off might not trip a decibel level, but come 10 o'clock at night and somebody's nail gunning away, I just would like to see if we could make some improvements, because I think what we're going to see happening, especially with changes in our code, is we're going to see a lot more infill development, and so these effects are very jarring to a neighborhood, and I hope we get some stronger standards. So that is my report, and so we're on to the next topic of Next regular meeting, it's scheduled for February 11, 2026. And now that we've completed all of our items, I call the meeting adjourned at 8:08.
Hard to believe it's the end